My name is David Edwards. For those of you who may not know me, I am an elder of the session at Front Royal Presbyterian Church and a resident of Front Royal with my wife Donna for the past 25 years. The worship committee has asked me this year to present a series of devotionals during Holy Week, focusing on art, paintings from the Middle Ages to the modern era, depicting the events in the biblical narrative of the last week in the life of Christ and his disciples, before his death and then resurrection on Easter Sunday. Each day during Holy Week, I will present a handful of paintings that tell the story of that momentous week. We begin with celebrating Palm Sunday through art on Monday. Then on Tuesday, I will be talking about paintings that depict Jesus healing in the temple. And on Wednesday, art that focuses on Jesus cleansing the temple of the money changers. On Thursday, paintings about the Last Supper, Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, and his arrest. And on Friday, the topics will be Peter's denial, Jesus' trial before Pontius Pilate, and finally his crucifixion and burial. There will be no presentation on Saturday, but I will return on Easter Sunday with another art presentation celebrating the resurrection. I hope you will enjoy any or all of the presentations and that they will serve as a meaningful devotional to you, as they do for me, during this most holy of weeks, culminating in Jesus' glorious resurrection on Easter Sunday. The first painting in the series celebrating Palm Sunday, here on Monday, is entitled He Wept Over It by Enrique Simonet, and it was painted in 1892. According to the 19th chapter of Luke, as Jesus approached Jerusalem, he looked at the city from the Mount of Olives and wept over it, foretelling the suffering that awaited the city in 70 A.D. when the Romans destroyed the temple and slaughtered the city's inhabitants. Enrique Simonet, a Spanish painter of the 19th century, depicted the scene on a huge canvas. It's 10 feet high by 18 feet long, that won for him several international art medals for its realism and atmospheric effects. Simonet traveled to the Holy Land to visit the Mount of Olives so he could depict the scene accurately. Jesus, in the center of the painting, in the dark blue robes, although weeping, seems to bless the city as his disciples gather. There is a spot left vacant to the right of Jesus, near the center of the painting. It's meant for us, the reviewers of the painting, and the painter is inviting us in to be a part of the scene. The sun is rising over the horizon, while the morning star is positioned directly over Jesus' head. I hope you'll be able to see the star directly over his head. It's intentional by the artist because another name for Jesus was the morning star. To the left and in the background of the painting, you may see several people coming up the craggy stony outcropping on Mount of Olives, carrying palm branches and leading a donkey. And of course, this will be used by Jesus in his triumphal entry into Jerusalem. This painting is a very popular one. It hangs at the Prado Museum in Madrid, Spain. The second painting in the series on Palm Sunday is entitled Jesus Wept by James Tissot, painted about 1890. Jacques or James Tissot was a French painter of Paris society who moved to London in 1871. He became famous as a genre painter of fashionably dressed women. His father was a successful drapery merchant, so he was very familiar in how to depict flowing robes and draped clothing in his 365 watercolors of biblical illustrations, many of them in a series on the life of Christ that made him famous after exhibitions of his paintings in Paris and New York in 1894. This painting shows Jesus in a starkly white, flowing garment with his hands to his face as he gently weeps over Jerusalem. Several of his women followers have joined him, and they are dressed very accurately in their clothing and in the colors of their clothing that would depict women of first century Palestine. And that's a subject that Tissot would have studied and accurately depicted in his paintings. This is a very human, touching painting. You can see it not only in the weeping of Jesus, showing his humanity, but in the faces of the women and how bewildered they seem to be at this display of emotion on such a happy day as Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem. The third painting in the celebration of Palm Sunday is entitled Christ Entering Jerusalem by the Italian painter Giotto di Bondone, and it was painted in 1304, a very early date for religious paintings. Giotto was a famous 14th century Florentine painter whose paintings bridged the Middle Ages and the Renaissance. He tends to paint more three-dimensional figures than his predecessors. This fresco painting, which is painted quickly on wet plaster, can be seen in a series on the life of Christ in the Arena Chapel in Padua, Italy. According to all four Gospels, Christ is celebrated in the entry to Jerusalem riding a donkey. Welcomed by the crowd flowing from the city gates, they lay down their cloaks as a pathway into the city. Christ is centered with a graceful posture and calm expression. He is riding a donkey that is stepping forward with a graceful trot that creates a flow of the picture with a gap between him and the crowd. To add to the composition, Giotto has placed children climbing what appear to be, possibly, palm trees to gather palm fronds for the celebrated entry into the city. And the painting depicts the 12 disciples trailing behind Jesus, perhaps not all depicted in the painting, but their gilded halos are. The flaky blue look of Jesus' robe is the result of expensive aquamarine paint that was placed there originally but has worn off over the years. And one more aspect, a very natural aspect of the painting, shows the woman to the far right taking off her garment over her head very naturally to place before the donkey, which I think is a very human, poignant part of the story. The fourth painting in this series is called Entry of Christ into Jerusalem by Anthony van Dyck, painted in 1617. Van Dyck was a 17th century Flemish artist who painted this scene when he was only 18 years old. A student of Peter Paul Rubens, Van Dyck moved to England in 1632 and became known for his portraits. He began the English School of Painting in England and was knighted by King Charles I. Van Dyck's presentation of Jesus' entry into Jerusalem is quite consistent with the biblical accounts. The ass foal he rides is almost entirely enveloped by his robes of rich blue and crimson. He is surrounded by his disciples on foot and jubilantly welcomed by a crowd of locals who lay branches in his path. It is a vigorous work full of bright colors and slashing brush strokes. The naturalism, drama, and muscularity of the overly sized figures makes it an example of the Baroque period in art and architecture. It hangs in the Indianapolis Museum of Art. The last painting in this series on Palm Sunday is entitled Lamb of God by the artist Tom Dubois. Dubois graduated from Chicago's famed American Academy of Art and now resides in Houston, Texas. Dubois' depiction of Jesus entering Jerusalem is so full of life and exuberance. From the man with outstretched arms and the excited woman with the tambourine directly behind Jesus, to the older woman in the shadows shouting to the left of Jesus, to the two little girls in the left-hand corner strewing flowers, and the other two older girls spreading their garments before Jesus and the donkey. It seems all of humanity, young and old, and of all races, have come together with joy to exclaim and celebrate the Messiah. Jesus himself is front and center, bathed in an eerie light that is accented by the yellow and white clothing that he wears. And the tambourine, the large tambourine that the woman in the red hood is playing directly behind Jesus, is framing his head like a halo. This painting celebrates, like no other, the life of Jesus as he enters Jerusalem for the momentous last week of his life before his resurrection on Easter Sunday.